howdy howdy, a massive Monty Python hello to my subscribers. I hope you're watching this from Castle Anthrax, and to everyone giving me a view, although you may think me a loony, I think you are invincible. Where to start? Stupid, idiotic, dense, slow and dull, yet equally, and at the same time, smart, clever, bright, astute, and sharp. We throw these words around as if we know what they mean, yet I'm not convinced we do. Dietrich Bonhoeffer was a German pastor, theologian, author, and was vocally anti-Nazi. He was extremely well educated and by all accounts was an inspiration in his time. His writings on Christianity's role in the secular world became very influential. For his efforts to advance humanity, he was hung in 1945 by the Nazis. It is not the man nor the villains I want to focus on, though. Rather, it is an important piece he wrote, which I think was very important then, and indeed now. Let's take a look at what Dietrich had to say on the topic of stupidity. Dietrich didn't define stupidity. Rather, he seems to have assumed we easily recognize it. Oxford defines it as behavior that shows a lack of good sense or judgment. Although I think this understanding is reasonable, it does bring up some questions. How many people do you think fall into this group? Well, are we looking for people who never use good sense or judgment? Rarely use good sense or judgment, or sometimes don't use good sense or judgment? I don't think I've ever met someone I would consider as never using good sense or judgment. Most people seem to exercise some good sense and judgment in some parts of their lives, trying to financially support themselves, not touching hot stoves, and brushing their teeth. Then perhaps we mean people who do not always use good sense or judgment, but who among us would suggest we never do stupid things? It would seem to me, then, that we are left with all of us fitting nicely into this stupidity category from time to time. If we were to dive a bit deeper here, we may find 3 times when we have done or said something really stupid. Perhaps due to some sort of ignorance on a topic. We see this sort of stupidity when those who have never studied biology before attempt to disprove evolution, for example. Maybe we have some sort of emotional reaction. We see this sort of stupidity when one penguin-looking dude slaps another penguin-looking dudes because a follically challenged person, much like your boy Afy, gets pissy. A lack of critical thinking ability. We see this sort of stupidity when one gives very poor reasons for their positions or against the positions of others. The use of fallacies seems to be a fairly good indicator here. Just as we all differ on who our families are and how we feel about the individual members, we all have different capabilities in differing areas or subjects in life. Maybe you know a lot about history, but keep getting 5 when adding 2 plus 2. You may be a wizard when it comes to fixing a car, but have trouble programming the microwave clock or maybe even a wind-up one. We all have topics on which we can speak intelligently, and other topics where we should probably be listening rather than speaking. As well, emotional reaction is an area where we all differ. Some would respond very emotionally to certain stimuli, whereas the same stimulus may not bother others at all. Regardless, it is very difficult to sound, and indeed be intelligent, while being overrun by emotions. Critical thinking is an area where most of us seem to think we are capable, but if that were in fact true, wouldn't we expect to find more agreement on all topics? Much like saying, I know a lot about calculus, requires one to have studied math. Saying I'm a critical thinker requires one to have learned at least some philosophy.
Stupidity is a more dangerous enemy of the good than malice. One may protest against evil, It can be exposed and, if need be, prevented by the use of force. Evil always carries within itself the germ of its own subversion, in that it leaves behind in human beings at least a sense of unease.
Yes, Dietrich is correct here. The inability to think clearly is worse than malice. Worse than both is apathy. People can and do protest evil. The problem that Dietrich missed is that not all agree on what malice is. Although I think all should have basic human rights. We have slave labor in China and the killing of homosexuals in the Middle East. We should help our fellow humans. But we have about 500,000 homeless people in the US alone. There are lots of issues which some, myself included, see as very malicious, where others simply do not appear to care. Apathy. It would seem like malice, or more correctly, what some see as malice, might indeed be caused by the stupidity that Dietrich mentions. This evil or malice, though, often does not leave behind a sense of unease. This happens because the person doesn't feel that what they did was wrong or evil. Evil people don't care if they're evil because they're evil, so they aren't likely to feel this unease. People who are not evil sometimes do things we think are horrible. They, however, don't think what they did was evil because they don't think they're evil. So they are also unlikely to feel this unease. Consider Jim Jones or Amber Pasdor.
Against stupidity we are defenseless. Neither protests nor the use of force accomplish anything here. Reasons fall on deaf ears. Facts that contradict one's prejudgment simply need not be believed. In such moments, the stupid person even becomes critical. And when facts are irrefutable, they are just pushed aside as inconsequential, as incidental.
Sorry, D-Man, I hope you are also slightly off here. I think we know very well how to fight stupidity. The answer is education. It seems obvious that we're not doing that very well, though. Protests nor force will change this stupidity, though. He was right about that. Protesting a flat earth is not going to change the mind of its supporters, nor is jailing them. Much like calling people bad names or banning them from social media platforms. It will not change their minds at all. Dietrich hit the proverbial nail on the head with facts, though. If they contradict a pre-existing belief, people often push these facts aside as inconsequential or incorrect, or wall them off, creating cognitive dissonance, where one holds several conflicting beliefs at the same time.
In all this, the stupid person, in contrast to the malicious one, is utterly self-satisfied and, being easily irritated, becomes dangerous by going on the attack. For that reason, greater caution is called for than with the malicious one. Never again will we try to persuade the stupid person with reasons, for it is senseless and dangerous.
I would guess that both the person we see as stupid, as well as the person who we see as malicious, would both feel self-satisfied, as they are doing what they think is correct, despite us thinking it or not. He does make another great point, though. When we disagree with someone, be they stupid, malicious, or even correct, they often go on the attack. This is one thing I'm always on about. Truth is searched for dispassionately. I very much disagree with not trying to persuade people. We have all been wrong before, me maybe more than most, and it was not until we had learned more that our minds changed. This can take many forms, and persuasion is certainly one of them.
If we want to know how to get the better of stupidity, we must seek to understand its nature. This much is certain, that it is in essence not an intellectual deficit, but a human one. There are human beings who are remarkably agile intellect, yet stupid, and others who are intellectually quite dull, yet anything but stupid.
Yes, if we want to solve a problem, it is vital to understand the problem. And yes, this stupidity that Dietrich mentions is probably best viewed as a human deficit and not some personal intellectual flaw. He goes on to point out that some people are smart but seem stupid, and some people who are stupid seem smart. But I think what he is seeing is what we started with. Saying one is smart doesn't mean much in a larger picture. Stephen Hawking was extremely gifted in some areas, but I would guess was quite deficient in others. Should we focus on the areas where he excelled and call him a genius? Or should we focus on the areas where he was below average and call him stupid? Or must we test all areas and see if he falls above or below the average in order to determine his total intelligence rating? This seems like a silly task. Perhaps the problem is our conception of intelligent versus stupid. And now a word from someone who will never sponsor me, and from whom I would never take a penny. If you are in the market for a new phone, something with proprietary screws, headphones, and solid-state drives, all the great things which will force you to be wholly dependent upon the company. If you are looking for software that is more expensive due to extra charges, if you want to support a company with slave-like working conditions and child labor practices in countries where literal slave labor and education camps exist with live organ transplants, if you are interested in paying more for that phone, which the company will slow down to entice you to buy the next version as soon as it comes out, go buy yourself an APO. Come on, who doesn't want to look like an entitled rich piece of crap who supports slavery? Buy your APO today. As a special promotion, all those who enter the code AFI into the Retreating Rainforest website will receive an overpriced, improperly sized cup of black water from Comet Coins. Sure, you can get a better and cheaper cup of coffee pretty much anywhere, but the feeling of glorious superiority, well, that is Comet Coins. You remember Monopoly, right? Whomever has all the money at the end wins. Let's all do our part to ensure we lose and they win. And now, back to our program.
We discover this to our surprise in particular situations. The impression one gains is not so much that stupidity is a congenital defect, but that, under certain circumstances, people are made stupid or that they allow this to happen to them. We note further that people who have isolated themselves from others, who live in solitude, manifest this deficit less frequently than individuals or groups of people inclined or condemned to sociability. And so it would seem that stupidity is perhaps less a psychological than a sociological problem.
I am actually not surprised to find people who are intelligent in some areas to be lacking in others. I find it mirrors my own life quite well. Some areas, although I really can't think of any, I may fall above the human average. Certainly there are many areas where I feel I would probably fall below said average. Furthermore, I don't think that people are made stupid unless we're talking about lobotomies, nor do I think they allow it to happen to them, by which I mean they do not make a conscious choice to become stupid. People are affected by a great many things: society, family, entertainment, media, education, and a host of others. These, to varying degrees, affect what we believe. Sometimes these push us towards stupid beliefs. Other times, they foster intelligent beliefs. His point about people who live alone is a good one, and goes to both his and my idea. For him, he is suggesting this shows that stupidity is a sociological problem, as opposed to a psychological one. For me, it shows that society does impact what people believe, sometimes to our benefit, and sometimes to our detriment, intellectually speaking.
It is a particular form of the impact of historical circumstances on human beings, a psychological concomitant of certain external conditions. Upon closer observation, it becomes apparent that every strong upsurge of power in the public sphere, be it of a political or of a religious nature, infects a large part of humankind with stupidity. It would even seem that this is virtually a sociological psychological law.
Back to agreement then. Yes. For those not born with some neurological issues which affect their intelligence nor physical injury, external conditions, or perhaps more accurately external stimuli, are of prime importance. Education and open conversation are the keys. Damn it, Dietrich, it's like ping pong with you. No, not every upsurge in power in the public square infects humanity with stupidity. I will certainly admit that groupthink is a problem, though, and perhaps that is what he meant. Furthermore, he certainly lived in a different time, and perhaps his comment was correct at that time, in his experience. If you need an example of an upsurge in power in the public square which did not infect humanity with stupidity, check out Martin Luther King Jr. I would suggest it was the opposite. It opened people's eyes to the stupidity of racism.
The power of the one needs the stupidity of the other. The process at work here is not the particular human capacities, for instance, the intellect, suddenly atrophy or fail. Instead, it seems that under the overwhelming impact of rising power, humans are deprived of their inner independence, and more or less consciously give up establishing an autonomous position towards the emerging circumstances.
Sorry, D-Man, but you're wrong again. Democracy, if it has ever truly existed anywhere, is a system where the power of the group, which is a single entity, requires the intelligence of the many. I certainly will not comment on what Dietrich went through. I cannot fathom it. However, this giving up of an autonomous position is not always the case. When Trump rose to power, about half of Americans retained their positions. And when Biden came to power, the other half retained their positions. What we are seeing here is not people giving up their autonomous positions. We are seeing people who have grouped themselves in tribes. And, as you're about to say, sir, are stubborn. And yes, I am talking about both sides.
The fact that the stupid person is often stubborn must not blind us to the fact that he is not independent. In conversation with him, one virtually feels that one is dealing not at all with a person, but with slogans, catchwords, and the like that have taken possession of him. He is under a spell, blinded, misused, and abused in his very being. Having thus become a mindless tool, the stupid person will also be capable of any evil, and at the same time incapable of seeing that it is evil. This is where the danger of diabolical misuse lurks, for it is this that can once and for all destroy human beings.
Give this guy a prize. Spot on, my man. This groupthink, this tribalism, is very dependent upon the tribe or group. This is precisely why discussion with people is difficult. As Dietrich points out, we are not actually having a discussion with a person, or even a standpoint. Instead, we're often arguing against the slogans, etc., which the group drills over and over again into their followers' heads. This ideology has taken over the person, and they often react very negatively to anyone questioning this ideology. There's nothing wrong with having beliefs. We all possess them. But if your beliefs form a cohesive ideology, like the Nazis, or the religious, and a great many more, then this is precisely how we can get a good person to do terrible things. Shout out to Steven Weinberg. Hell yes, Dietrich. The beliefs of people will cause the destruction of humanity, assuming we will be destroyed. And all the aliens who hate TikTok and the Kardashians don't do it first.
Yet at this very point, it becomes quite clear that only an act of liberation, not instruction, can overcome stupidity. Here we must come to terms with the fact that, in most cases, a genuine internal liberation becomes possible only when external liberation has preceded it. Until then, we must abandon all attempts to convince the stupid person.
I'm not sure there's a meaningful difference between liberation and instruction in this context, but perhaps I'm not understanding the way it was intended. If we want to educate people, we first have to liberate them from their harmful beliefs. But how is this not educating them? As Dietrich points out, external liberation often precedes internal liberation, but the way we externally liberate is to educate. Whether we do this education on a public scale, as I'm attempting to do, or an individual basis, the end result is the same. Either we can, or we can't. The reasons are simple. Either we're wrong, or our audience is. Either we're not convinced, or our audience isn't convinced. But refusing to give up is the only way we could possibly bring about change.
This state of affairs explains why, in such circumstances, our attempts to know what the people really think are in vain, and why, under these circumstances, this question is so irrelevant for the person who is thinking and acting responsibly.
Trying to know what the people think is a doomed enterprise, unless you're happy with the answer of different stuff. Rather, focus on what one person thinks. You may or may not be able to change their mind, but at least you're interacting with them in terms of what they think. Others may hear this exchange, perhaps thinking similarly. Due to the conversation not being directed at them, they may not feel the aggression or defensiveness that we had agreed to earlier. Like and subscribe, Damn, that is really in poor taste. Rest in peace, my man. You are a great thinker and a wonderful person who deserve none of what you suffered through.
The word of the Bible, that the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom, declares that the internal liberation of human beings to live the responsible life before God is the only genuine way to overcome stupidity.
The word of Harry Potter, that the refusal of using the name Voldemort is the beginning of safety, suggests that the longevity of human beings is related to overcoming dark magic. Sorry, D-Man, this is trash. You've just said that a book says something. I've just said that a book says something. If you really want to make the point, you would first have to show that the Bible is authoritative in any way, just as I would have to show that one should care at all what is in or isn't in Harry Potter. Just as some may not care what ideas or concepts reside in Harry Potter, the majority of the world doesn't care at all what's in the Bible, as more than half of the world doesn't follow it. In fact, though, it's worse than this. As we've just seen, you said, in conversation with him, one virtually feels that one is dealing not at all with the person, but with slogans, catchwords, and the like that have taken possession of him. He's under a spell, blinded, misused and abused in his very being. Your Bible, your God, is exactly like this groupthink which you've just attacked. Jesus loves you. Be good so you can go to heaven. Do this, don't do that. He died for your sins, etc., etc. You've raised your bow against a terrible figure, and I support you in that. But you've propped up another horrible figure in his place. You've traded a terrible mass-murdering dictator for another terrible mass-murdering dictator. This time, a literal zombie. Happy Easter. An important difference I can see is that the one you've chosen is supposedly eternal. If given the choice to be kicked in the nuts once, or kicked in the nuts for all of eternity, well, the choice isn't too hard.
But these thoughts about stupidity also offer consolation in that they utterly forbid us to consider the majority of people to be stupid in every circumstance. It really will depend on whether those in power expect more from people's stupidity than from their inner independence and wisdom.
I am very happy to end on agreement with you, Dietrich. It is ridiculous to think that the majority of people are stupid in every circumstance. All of us are smart and stupid in different areas and at different times. Simply calling someone stupid, insane, or some other slur not only skips over the chance to understand and perhaps educate them, but also solidifies our belief that our group is correct and theirs is wrong or bad. I fear that the times have changed, though. It seems that those in power are not balancing stupidity with wisdom, but rather are actively promoting stupidity. Perhaps in order to gain the control over the population in a similar way to what you saw in your time. I am certainly not making the claim that our leaders are Nazis. I'm only suggesting that what Dietrich saw as a control of the population, and moreover the method he has outlined, is similar to what we are seeing nowadays, and what we have been seeing for quite a while now. There might be some benefit in thinking a bit before calling someone smart. Do we mean they are smart in all areas, or in some areas? If we're saying they're smart in some areas, then why are we focusing on the areas in which they are intelligent instead of the areas in which they are stupid? If the only reason for this is to be nice or support them or make them feel good, then why are we using the word stupid at all? Surely these stupid people have many areas in which they are much more intelligent than we are. Use those areas where you have great intelligence to teach others what you know, and I would implore you to lose the word stupid altogether. We're all stupid until we learn.